Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 317 with myself and my co-host, Sarah Monroe. So we were going to have Scott Monroe. We're going to have Scott Ayres join us, but he's stuck in traffic. And I got to say, that's one of those things where now that a lot of people are not having to commute as much, they do have to kind of, it is getting, it takes a lot more time. You got to factor in, all that commute time and things like that. And so hopefully he'll be joining us. If he does join us, we'll bring him in. I want to thank our listeners, by the way. We're broadcasting all over the place. So we're over on youtube.com/social chefs, facebook.com/social chefs, but we're also broadcasting over on Twitter Spaces @social chefs as well. So if you are wanting to just listen to this, just go over there. You can listen to us. You can watch us here on YouTube or Facebook. But with that, I'm going to go and bring on my co-host, Sarah. Sarah, it's great having you back. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And I have to laugh about the traffic. You and I were talking, we were preparing for the show last night. I was stuck in traffic. Like, we haven't had traffic in northern New England all season. And now all of a sudden, when I have to go somewhere, there's traffic. So, we roll with it. And Scott's a good friend. I'm sure we'll have him back very soon. So, and we'll work through all the technology glitches that we seem to be having too, and just keep moving. That's what being online is all about, right?
It is, yeah. And I like the point you made. I mean, it's all about, like, you can't get stagnant in trying to, for example, grow your business, tap into social media, for example. There's always something changing. You and I were talking about this week's topics, a lot of Facebook group tools. And, you made a really good point to me, and you said, hey, you know what? A lot of what Facebook's coming out with is stuff that people were paying $10,000 for years ago. And
exactly.
So, I think the key takeaway there is, you really just have to, like, don't look in the past. Don't look in the rearview mirror. Look forward. So,
Right. Well, why don't we just jump into the first topic today? And that is about Facebook community groups and Facebook groups, I should say. And as you just mentioned, Christian, I worked at a web agency where we would build out these very dynamic groups, pages and forums and communities on websites. And now Facebook is offering all of this for free for creators. So it's pretty exciting how much they're building out the features in groups. So there's going to be more customization, so you can set the tone and the culture of your group. You're going to be able to have welcome messages, choose different tones and colors and backgrounds and fonts. You're going to be able to customize collections. All of those things that used to be in those online forums are now coming to Facebook groups. And I'd even go so far as to speculate that this is going to be the first step into the Metaverse, right? That Facebook groups is going to be the first taste that a lot of people have in an immersive community, especially for people who aren't into the gaming or collaborative gaming space, that this is going to be the first place where people are much more interactive, where the virtual reality, the augmented reality, all of those things that Meta is talking about is going to come into the Facebook platform. There's going to be a lot more tools for the admins to provide assistance. There's going to be some private community chats for the admins. So think of it like a Slack group, but within the Facebook app. So you don't have to jump away for your, if you have a large community and you have a big team of moderators and admins, you don't need to jump off the app to go somewhere else. one thing that I think is really interesting is that they're going to launch subgroups. And within the subgroups, you can actually have a paid subscription to the subgroups too. So it's sort of like that in-app purchase among community groups. And if you think of those huge groups that we're a part of, a couple weeks ago in 3 weeks ago during episode 314, we were talking to Andrew Kavanaugh, and he has hundreds of thousands of people in some of his Lightroom groups. And just think of that there may be some, for instance, within that Lightroom group, narrowing down to landscape photography or portrait Lightroom adjustments, things like that. You could have subgroups within that larger community, so people don't have to go somewhere else to sort of mine in and dive a little deeper into some different topics. So it's going to be a really interesting new life for Facebook groups, which they have been pushing really hard, not just within the app, but also with advertising in traditional media. So, Christian, what do you think about Facebook groups and all these great new improvements?
I gotta say, I mean, I like what they're doing here. I really do. I think that a lot of the functionality that I think that's super important here is, I think one is the whole fact that running a group, like, for example, we talked with Andrew and he had like 100, was it 100,000? I think it was more than that. He had a couple of groups that were huge.
Yeah, like 300,000 people or something like that, 250.
And here's the thing. Like when you get groups like that large, the other thing is like in his case, he doesn't necessarily he could give all, I assume he does. A lot of people give a lot of that information away for free. And in his case though, what he could do is he could set up a subgroup, which would be, like, hey, people can put certain things out there. And then if they want instead of like one really expensive one-on-one coaching, it could be like subgroups where you could charge somebody, $30, for example, a month or something like that to be able to access a certain subset of people. And you could cap that group at 100 people, for example, things like that. Other thing I also like about it is you could have like a really large group and it could be helping somebody, for example, with it could be just a general group. And then you could actually have smaller subgroups off of that for beginner, intermediate, advanced that people can join as well. So it keeps them, for starters, it keeps them entrenched in your Facebook group. But it also provides those ways to be able to monetize. And I really like that functionality there to be able to monetize groups, because that is one of the biggest challenges that a lot of people have. What they will do, or what they would typically do, is they would set up groups on they'd set up like a Facebook group. They'd call it private, for example, so it doesn't show up in search results. And then they'd have something on their website where somebody checked out. And then they now have to match up, part A with part B and say, okay, hey, Sarah paid for this. Okay, let me put her in the group. Oh, Sarah's not paying anymore. Let me go remove her from the group. There was no seamlessness there. And so I really like that functionality that they're going to be adding with this.
Right. I think it's a little bad news for web developers, because now the platforms and some of the things we're talking about later in the show today too, like buffer pages and some of these other pieces that we're talking, Twitter Blue and things, that payment piece is right on the social media platforms. Right. So that you don't have to do that matching. It's much less. It may be. I mean, this is all speculation because we haven't actually seen them in practice yet.
We're pretty good at speculating, though. We're pretty good at actually calling things pretty good. I mean,
we are doing pretty well with that. Fingers crossed, our track record continues, right? So, but that matchup, that like you just said, that administration. I know that you and I think, are both part of Social Media Pros with Doreen Moore and Van Dam, right? And so their admin team has to match up to make sure that everybody in that Facebook group is still active within their memberships and all of the other administration that goes to it. So I think it's a really interesting play. I think it's also going to make some safer spaces. I think the fire hose that is social media coming at us. I always talk about Twitter as being a fire hose coming at you with information, but Facebook has really become that too. A lot of the social media platforms have begun that. It's just too much to keep up with, too much to take in. and sometimes just too much emotionally to handle. And so the groups may be these safer segments of the Facebook universe, metaverse, right? So maybe that safer place where you can just be with your tribe, right?
I gotta say a couple of things here. So for starters, like you mentioned, how we're not spending, like, for example, like Facebook can become that fire hose. For example, I work at StreamYard, and so it powers this show, and I spend most
Mhm.
of my time when I'm on Facebook. For example, I see a lot of Facebook group posts because we have a private Facebook group. We have a Facebook group for the community that I'm
Mhm.
constantly in there answering questions and things like that, and so it's one of those things where, like, when you get into a group, it's going to be really interesting because it's like you go down that black hole of
Mhm.
like the group, and then it impacts based off the algorithm everything else that you're seeing. So
Right.
I do like that they are starting to move to basically build that community, because that is the other thing also. When you join a Facebook group, you got to remember everybody joins at different social media doesn't matter, but everybody joins
Mhm.
at different stages. And so
Mhm.
somebody who initially joins, that group may run differently than another group that they're part of.
Right.
And so I think by having a lot of these community aspects, or aspects for at least building a community, I think that is going to be extremely valuable to somebody who is running a Facebook group, because it's going to help reduce some of that, like frustration, I guess, that a user might have if they've never joined a Facebook group, and then they get there and they're like, well, what do I do now? Right.
Right.
Because,
Right.
yeah.
And I think that's what collections too. People have been able to segment some of the posts and put them into little places so that you can walk through some of the posts are that are related to different. I'm thinking of one social media group that I'm in, and so
Mhm.
there's a collection about Instagram, there's a
Yeah.
collection about Facebook, so you can go back in the archive a little bit. But
Yeah.
as you said, you're always getting new people in, and so you're always going to get that person. I know my hometown, I'm in a community group for my hometown,
Uh-huh.
and every 6 months or so it's who knows a plumber, right?
Right.
I need to
So
find a
they should be
plumber.
using Nextdoor, shouldn't they? Or
Yeah, maybe. So and on the other side, besides the user, you had said you're constantly in StreamYard
Mhm.
too. All of those admins and moderators, it sounds like the tools that are going to come into the back end
Yeah.
for groups, you'll be able to see, oh, some Christian already responded to this, or someone took a post down, and this is why you're seeing maybe someone being a little aggravated and annoyed that their post came down,
Yep.
and want to know why. And so
Right.
you, as another admin, can see, oh, this has been already documented. And so now I know why, and I will address it because clearly someone else is busy.
Yeah.
So,
So
um,
there are a couple other features, by the way, of these new Facebook group tools that they're going to be rolling out, and one of
mhm.
those is they're rolling out community awards. I do
Yeah.
kind of want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, it's going to allow admins to encourage and reward members
Hmm.
for
Right.
positive participation in the group, by
Right.
anointing select posts with like things like insightful, uplifting, fun, informative,
Hmm.
or relevant. Do you
Right.
think that those are going to be helpful? What's your
I'm thinking back to it was in July. We were talking to Doreen Moore and Van Dam, and
Yeah.
we were saying, is this really necessary? And Doreen runs quite a few groups, and she's like, oh, yeah, we can use these awards or these badges in these different ways to encourage people to contribute more, to reward them for what they're bringing to the usefulness or relevancy that they're bringing to the group. I think we all like that little pat on the back, right?
Yeah.
It's a little thanks for sharing this. Besides just the comments, the admins can actually give something a little more official, a little more fun, right? And I think that episode was 300. So if people want to go back in the social chatter archives, they can see what we were talking about with Doreen about how she felt that those little tools and awards and things could be implemented. Because I think back in July was when they were first teasing out that these things would come.
Fantastic. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I like what NLTMW is saying here, saying, more granularity will be helpful,
Hmm.
obviously, for running a Facebook group. So, Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
And the customization will be fun too. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of colors, a lot of fonts, a lot of things to make your group seem different. And I think that will be really appealing to some people. It gives you a chance to sort of set the tone and feel that you want for your community online.
yeah, I think that's all like super important information. The other thing also, I think we so obviously like there's a lot of tools that are obviously being rolled out for your Facebook groups here. I just have a couple of other like questions, I guess. So like, you know, why is community so important? I mean, I'm glad Facebook's rolling these tools out, but like, why does that really matter for a business, Sarah?
Yeah, that's the big hairy question, isn't it? What can this do for you? I think for some brands, like you were just mentioning StreamYard, I'm part of an Agora Pulse users group. For
Yeah,
users groups, it's great. We talked about Andrew Kavanaugh's groups about Lightroom,
yeah,
right? That
yeah.
you can really join a group of people who are using the same tools that you're using. And that can give you the opportunity to either promote your product like StreamYard, right? Or to just say, promote other people within the group as Andrew does. It's like different photographers, different editors, things like that can get
Mm-hmm.
promoted and elevate their expertise, and maybe someone will hire them. There might be some business opportunities in that. Other ways, it's sometimes it's it's what is your business's mission and values, right? And
Uh-huh.
can you build a community around that? I know some friends who are part of these Volkswagen groups. It's all these people who love Volkswagen, and Volkswagen will occasionally jump in and like things or say things to them. I'm sure they probably run their own groups too. But
Yeah.
it is a way to share information, to help people use your products. I can see, let's use LL Bean as an example.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Certainly they can promote, they have a lot of discovery classes and things like that they can promote, but they can also share tips and ideas about hiking or elevate. They have a lot of users now that, not users, but I should say creators that they're elevating too. Some people from different backgrounds, so you can see how they are accessing the outdoors when traditionally they may not have. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to be people behind the brand in an online community. So what do you think, Christian?
I gotta say, I actually think that most businesses actually should have a Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
They should either have a Facebook group or at least a community that they are building. Because here's the thing: like you can go and you can have a website, and you can put all your blog posts on the website, but you're typically, hopefully, your mission is about more than that. Like for example, if I'm Canva, like Canva it's a design tool. Like it helps
Mm-hmm.
people who aren't designers create designs, whether that is digital artwork, printed artwork, so it helps with that. And so the thing is, they can put out articles. Their articles will typically talk about a topic like, hey, how do you like explaining resolution or cropping or layering or things like that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then in their case, like they have Facebook groups of Canva users who are using the product, and so like it in a way they become like potentially a support forum, but it also could become a place for, like as you mentioned with Andrew, he does a Photoshop like Facebook
Mm-hmm.
group, and Lightroom. He could have like there could be a Canva one for helping people understand those concepts much more than, hey, go read the article, because somebody could go read the article, and the thing is it still doesn't sink in for a lot of people.
Right.
And so
Right.
yeah.
And I think ultimately it's where people are, right?
Right.
I think of I'm it's no secret that I'm a big YouTube watcher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I follow a lot of photography people. I follow a lot of political vloggers, a lot of different things on YouTube. And yes, there's a comment section that I engage with sometimes. But yeah, it would be great to have a Facebook group like B&H Photo in New York. I watch practically all of their videos on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, I hadn't really thought about whether or not they have a Facebook group, but I should probably check that out and see, because there may be a way that I can be a part of that community even more in a place that I already am. right? I'm already there mostly for work. And less personal, but I think groups really are the place to be there more personally. And just a little aside, something that I've noticed, when I open up the comments of a group post,
Mhm.
I've noticed that it doesn't then jump to the next post in my Facebook feed. It shows me additional groups that I might be interested in.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know if it's only me. Maybe some people can say in the comments if they've been seeing that. I only see it on iOS. I have an iPhone, so it's just the iOS app. But I think they're testing something to suggest groups even more to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm a part of so many of them. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of times I see some of these features or I see the news come up and I said, wait a second, I saw that 6 months ago. And sure enough, I was unbeknownst to me, part of a testing group.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I mean, just all these Facebook tools that are coming out for groups, like I think they're going to be extremely useful. I just want to highlight a couple other ones real quick. So, for example, Facebook's also like this one. I think is like extremely important if you are managing a Facebook group. They're rolling out community chats, and so when we talk about building a community, the biggest challenge when you build a community is that you then have to have a team of moderators, and you need multiple admins, you need multiple moderators because you typically want the sunset model, which is, you want to have pretty much 24/7 coverage if you can. Otherwise, every day is going to just build and build and build up, almost like a pile of like dirty laundry. If you never do the clothes, you throw it all on the floor, it's just going to keep building up. And if you're doing them as they're going, you're not necessarily going to have that big pile every single day facing you if you're constantly addressing them as they come in. And so they're rolling out community chats. This is a way for Facebook and Messenger, by the way, to allow admins and moderation teams to talk to each other in real time. Now, here's why I think this is important. Because when you're running a Facebook group, what a lot of people will do is they will set up a second private Facebook group just for moderators. And then this way you can talk to your moderators there. But in this case, you don't need them at all. You don't need to have that second group. So it's one less group you have to manage. You can manage your main group and then just have that separate moderator community chat now in Facebook within the Facebook group. So, and this also, I mean, I like Sarah's point, by the way, she made about having the ability to move this into the metaverse, because I definitely agree with you. I think that's what's going to happen here. Because if you think about it, if you're building a group or a community, Facebook wants that community to also potentially be able to probably work within Oculus and some, with all of their other products.
Yeah.
So,
Facebook Workplace. Yeah.
And so I could easily see, for example, now we move into, let's just say we're doing a group chat. And let's say Sarah and I were helping, like running a Facebook group, and we had 5 other people. I think we'd also be able to talk to one another, like almost like we were actually in a physical environment, but we were in a virtual space. So I definitely could see that being extremely useful there. So that's a feature. And then I also want to highlight, there's also recurring events you can set up in groups as well. So these are for like people that are like meeting virtually or in person, by the way. So if you've ever been using other tools, for doing like in-person meetings, you don't necessarily, again, Facebook's, they're not trying to be everything to all people, but they're trying to give you options.
Right.
So if your community is on Facebook and you're building that group, then they want to have the tools to make it easy for you to support that. So awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. Some of the LinkedIn experts that we talk to too, they say the most dynamic groups among themselves are Facebook groups, right? And then we see Instagram's VPs are announcing things or leaking features on Twitter. So there's a lot across the network. So,
definitely.
and there was a good comment.
Was it this one?
NLTMW, yeah, Facebook groups can take the load off a company support team. We've talked about that on and off over the last year, and how that Facebook groups or Messenger or just WhatsApp, all the different direct messaging that you can have through social media and how that can help or hinder your support team. I used to work with plumbers and HVAC contractors at that web agency. And they had to train that, their dispatchers, they had to train their customers that if you are in an emergency, you need to call the emergency number, right? Yes, we'll do our best to fold in all of these DMs into our process, but you still need to call. Like if you have a big issue with an airline, don't just tweet at them. Actually, call customer service, right? Oh, no. So I think it can help, and I think it can be both, but it has to be part of the workflow, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember when, I don't know, it was probably 5 years ago or so. I was training some town clerks and municipal staff about using social media. And they said, when in our day, what do we give up in our day? How do we add this to your day? And it's like, well, you have your phone ringing, you have your email, and now you got this. So I think that's why a lot of brands, a lot of government agencies, a lot of nonprofits have a struggle with social media, is keeping up with the information that comes in and how they support their customers when they're everywhere and you're trying to spread your staff too thin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And so I want to go back to some of these Facebook group tools, by the way, we were showing here. So here, let me just pull these up actually. So again, like these are some of the new tools that are available. So you're going to have, as Sarah mentioned, you're going to have, in addition, obviously, like ways to moderate the group, you're going to have, in this case, this is the subgroups that you can create off the main group. You're going to have the ability to charge somebody per month, for example. Again, there are things to not, because the other thing I guess you got to remember when you're running Facebook groups is that you want to make sure that it's easy for people to be able to, like, so they don't feel, what's the word I'm looking for, Sarah? Like so they don't feel, I guess, like out of place. Like if they join the group and everything is like so advanced for them, mm-hmm. You're going to have members that, like, if it's too beginner, you're going to have your advanced members be like, well, hey, I don't want to spend my time here. And if it's too advanced for your beginners are going to say, oh, well, I'm not going to this isn't the right place for me. And
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's all about setting that culture, which is a piece that Facebook is saying that these tools are going to help you set that culture. And hopefully members of groups know that everybody's a beginner at some point. And with all of these tools changing all of the time, we all become beginners again. Like the amount of changes and features now that are coming to Facebook groups with this announcement, I have to say, rolls back my expertise. Like, okay, I got to do some homework here to figure out how I can change things. And you would hope that you can set the conversation and you can set the tone in these new places. And in the welcome message too, is saying, well, we welcome you. You're new. We recognize that new people come in all the time. And we want you to be a part of this. So don't apologize for saying, hey, I'm new here. I don't know this. Right. The same with that community group in my hometown. There are people who are like, hey, I'm so excited. I'm moving here. Can someone give me some advice on where to find a dog walker or how to find who's the best dentist for my kids or something like that. So I think people need to give each other a break a little more on social media, just in general.
They do. Yes. And I have two last questions. I think or one example, I guess, and one question. And I guess the example I would share is when somebody goes into a store. So let's say you go into, like, we could say a sporting goods store or department store. Okay. So like that is your community, right? So somebody goes into a sporting goods store. Now the thing is, they can go to all, like that could be your Facebook group. They want to, for example, find the golf section or the softball section or something, right? And the thing is, the first person that they are greeting or being greeted by, hopefully, is an associate of the company. And so I think that's like their initial welcome message. And then at this point, like they need that help, but they want to make sure that they get directed to the right department, for example, so they're not wasting their time. So then it's up to you, as the admin of that group or the moderator, it's to be there to help guide that person to the right place so that they are feeling like welcomed into that group,
Right.
And so, yeah.
And you keep the conversation going within that group too, right? Using that store analogy, I used to teach cooking classes at a local kitchen supply store.
Okay.
And we had a group of regulars, right? We had a group of regulars that showed up every other Sunday and wanted to learn all the different techniques, and some of which I didn't teach because they were too advanced for me. But, they got to learn things. They bought the products. They got to chat with each other. And so that's what a Facebook group can be as well. And they welcomed new people. Although I got to say, there was a cupcake class where I had some of my regulars elbow out the new ones. And you're going to get that online too. So you have to manage that as an admin too, in keeping the conversation going, moving forward, providing relevant information. You can't just let the folks wander around on their own aimlessly.
Yep.
Otherwise they'll leave, right?
Yep, absolutely. So that's the first point I want to make. And the second point I wanted to make, just overall about, just building community. And this is like, just to kind of answer about Facebook group tools. Where can people find all these tools at, Sarah?
I think I always think the best place to go when all of these new things roll out, and there's a massive amount of them like there is right now.
Yeah.
I would go to help.facebook.com.
Okay.
That's always a terrific place to start. And then also, I haven't even checked to see if they changed the URL. It's business.facebook.com, I think. There is a special page just for businesses on Facebook. Now, remember, businesses means, when they say business, it can mean a nonprofit, it can mean a group, it can mean whatever. So really go to their sources because they put out a lot of great tutorials. I doubt that these things are part of Facebook Blueprint. Say that 3 times fast, right? But I'm sure it's coming, so that they'll have training modules on it to help you. And you can go to there. Everybody has advice about Facebook, but really my go-to is always Facebook themselves first. And then some experts, some really well-known experts like Mari Smith, I think is really good too.
So in terms of the new Facebook group tools, by the way, so if you go to your group right now, you're not going to see these. So apparently this whole like new experience, so you're not going to see the community chats. You're not going to see the subgroups yet, the community fundraiser feature, the admin assist. You're going to see admin assist, but again, they're evolving a lot of this. So what they're going to do basically is, they said they're in early testing about this new experience. So they said over the next year, it's going to become more broadly available. So if you are some of those, if you're some of those power users, you may already have access to this. But for the most part, it's going to be rolling out. So they're giving a preview of what it's going to look like in 2022. Very I don't anticipate they'll roll this out by end of year. So
you never know. They may have been planning this. This may be all part of the metaverse. You never know. So
there's lots of stuff there, but be sure you go and check that out. Okay, so Sarah, what other social media news do we have this week?
Yeah, so let's sticking with Meta. Getting used to saying that company name over and over again. There were internal documents leaked to the New York Times this week that Meta, aka Facebook, right, is going to open brick-and-mortar stores. And that's to sell the hardware that they're developing. So their VR headsets, formerly known as Oculus, their AR glasses, so Ray-Ban Stories, as far as we know, are the only glasses right now, but there could be something else. And then Portal. So I think them thinking about opening a brick-and-mortar store means that they are going to have a lot more hardware coming. And it gives people a chance to try out this metaverse in real life, right, before they actually dive in and try it out. So it's going to be like the Apple Store, but for all the Facebook products, really, right? So a unique experience, all branded to Meta, have the look and feel of all the apps. and be a place where you can actually go in and try stuff out. And I have to say, as a person who, I always have a hard time with video games, I have a hard time with the headsets too, just the spatial stuff in my vision, I just can't figure it out. So, before investing that amount of money, I do want to try it out. Right. And yes, I can try it out at other retailers, but this will have Meta experts who can talk about Reality Labs and talk about how these things are going to work. So what do you think? Maybe it'll go into downtowns too, the malls and downtowns that have so many empty storefronts. It could be a boom. I don't know.
I got to say this. I think this is a very smart move by Facebook. I think they're borrowing this page from Amazon. So Amazon, they have, like, for example, if you go into like Georgetown, there's an Amazon bookstore. If you go into, some shopping malls, whether you're in the States or even overseas, they will have Amazon stores there as well. With this sort of, the ability to buy, in this case, they're selling books, but Amazon would be also, for example, selling like Kindle White, all those things, Paperwhite, things like that went with it. If I'm Facebook, I want to do the same thing. And I want to have a small kiosk, because that way people can try it on, things like that as they're going to these places and get the actual experience versus buying. I'm glad they have the ability to buy it online, but I think it's a product that people need to experience to get them to buy it. So, for example, I had the chance to play with the Ray-Ban Stories over the weekend, and I got to say, just trying them on, they looked great. But my big question was like, I have the Snapchat, I had the Snapchat spectacles. When I put the Ray-Ban Stories on, they felt great. They felt like a regular pair of sunglasses. They weren't heavy. They didn't feel bulky. They weren't too tight. They felt like regular sunglasses. And the other thing was, I could actually do a comparison. I could see how they were there, and I could try on other pairs of Ray-Bans that didn't have that Stories functionality that Facebook has. So I love the idea of them launching a retail store to help drive further adoption of their products. If I'm a business, if you're going to be out and about traveling, for example, or you're just out like on the weekend doing some shopping, things like that, I wouldn't, even if it's not in your budget at the moment, I would still pop in if they happen to open these stores. I would pop in and try things out. That way you can experience them and start to hopefully envision how the Facebook products will potentially fit into your business. So
Right. Yeah. And I got to say, we've talked about Portal a lot over the last couple of months too, with Facebook Workspace and things like that. I have to say, when they opened up a store, it's like, I can finally see if I want a Portal. Even though I have a laptop and an iPhone and an iPad and all these other kinds of things, I'm like, maybe a Portal, maybe.
Yeah. So I think I think you can go to a Best Buy and test out the Portal.
Yeah, you can. But I don't think of that. I was like, there's going to be a Meta store. I can go, right?
Well,
the Amazon store.
And then the other thing also, you got to remember about it like this. If I'm a Facebook and I should say if I'm a Meta, I should open up a pop-up shop. The other reason also why is because if I were to, it's great you put your products in another electronic store, but you also have to remember, your product's going to probably be situated next to another product. And so if your product that you're selling does not meet the same level as another one, people have the ability to compare choices right there. Versus if I'm Facebook and I'm doing this and I'm like, hey, you know what? I just want to get adoption of it.
Yep.
Open your own little stores. Let people try out the product, see how they like it. And then they don't have to actually compare it to the other ones.
Right. So, yeah. There's a reason why I have an iPad and not
Samsung tablet.
Android tablet. Yeah. Yeah. So,
awesome.
Hey, so speaking of stores
Yeah.
and virtual stores and not brick and mortar, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but this is something we're going to talk about.
I know
where I'm going, right?
I'm excited about
Snapchat is actually going to let you try on clothing so that you can actually put on a virtual wardrobe. And let's remember that this is actually to sell apparel, right? Snapchat is sort of bringing together their camera and their filter technology to allow you to see what a garment will look like on you. But remember, Meta is talking about things like digital wardrobes. When we're in this truly virtual world and maybe virtual workspaces, we can actually buy, quote unquote, buy digital wardrobes. So this is going to be interesting. Will we have real garments that we can buy to wear in real life? And maybe we can have virtual garments. I don't know. I'm just sort of throwing that out there, but it is kind of cool Snapchat news that's happening.
Well, and I think we have a video, by the way, too, of this. So let's play this video because I think you need to kind of see this.
Yeah, it is kind of cool.
So this is an AR, like, so it's called the Snapchat gift shop lens. And people are able to basically select an item and try it on. I'm not sure. I don't know how I feel about this one, Sarah. I love the concept of trying on clothing. I think it's really amazing. Got to say though, I mean, when I try it on, I want to feel texture, for example.
Right.
I want to feel like, for example, like I'm on this like sweatshirt I'm wearing, like I know that it's super soft. I also can like look at the hood, for example. I can feel like, oh, hey, is there a tag bothering me? You know, if there are things that are printed on there, for example, is it good quality printing? That's not something you're going to get with a virtual try-on, but I do love the idea that you can put something on. For example, I can have a virtual hat, for example, right now, if I wanted to, without having to actually have all this stuff around. What do you think about this? I mean,
I think sunglasses have been doing, glasses companies have been doing it for a while. Yeah, where you can try on the glasses. I think it's a step forward. Yeah, there's always going to be something you want to feel and touch. You can't replace that.
Right.
But if you want to see what something might look like on you, this is a great step as far as the technology goes. And it's keeping Snapchat relevant. We got to say, Snapchat, the teenagers that I know are using Snapchat as cameras. You know, they don't use the camera on their phone. They use their Snapchat app.
Right. Because it makes it cool, and it makes it cool. It makes it also sticky. So, you know, and it's something that's also like, it can be fun. I mean, I got to say, I've said this like for years since Snapchat started moving away from social and being a camera company. I knew exactly where they were going with this because it made sense. Like they said, hey, you know, while everybody else is zigging, we're going to zag here. And, you know, yeah, their hardware could like move along faster, but now the fact that they have like the ability to digitally try something on, and it's still pretty cool. Like that you could at least get an idea of like, I mean, you could start from the basics. Like, hey, you know what? Oh, should I get the gray color or the black color or the white version of this? You could at least see like, hey, you know what? The gray one makes me look a little washed out. So
is it too long, too short kind of thing too? Yeah.
Lots of stuff. And the other thing also, I mean, is like the cameras are improving so much that like this type of technology should become more readily available. I mean, you can do it for makeup, things like that, you know, like that's pretty awesome. But like, I can even see like, I don't know if haircuts even do this, like, but try-ons of everything, not just like merch. If I were doing merch, I love the idea, like you mentioned, by the way, if I were doing merch and I wanted to do a Facebook, the Metaverse, it would make sense to have the ability to try on, like to have digital, you know, clothing or outfits or whatever. That makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I love the direction this is evolving. Now, here's the thing. If I'm a business right now, I can't really use this very much. I mean, I do have to have they're testing the Snapchat gift shop lens. So some Snapchat accounts may have it. I would say this. We always like talk about this. Just because you may not use Snapchat, your customers may not use Snapchat, doesn't mean that you as a business cannot use Snapchat. You should have an account. You should potentially go in and test some different things because these are going to give you ideas. Like you could be going really hard in one direction and then you try the Snapchat try-on thing and you're like, you know what? Hey, I really like this. And then maybe it ignites a passion in you to move away from what you were doing or to consider it something that, you know, hey, I do need to consider adding digital merch or something like that. So.
And let's not forget that the social media platforms that are outside the big three or big four, however many you want to say is the core. So it is the Snapchats and the TikToks that are driving the technology for the others, right? We have Instagram. Facebook bought Instagram because of Snapchat, right? And now TikTok, it has made shorts go across every single platform.
Yeah.
There are short form videos. So, and you still see the TikTok logo, right? Because people are just repurposing their TikToks into the other platforms. So just because you may not be on Snapchat, it's a good place to have some fun in the sandbox, because this will be coming. This will be coming. Jumping back to that topic too about the meta stores, you're going to be able to have a full body scan so that you can make an avatar that looks like you. So the next step after having those exact measurements of your physical self will be to sell you apparel that's actually going to fit that body. That is scanned at the store.
It's going to be just like Avatar, by the way.
It's
going to be where like you're going to have the full on, like, hey, you're going to have like camouflage, or you're going to have digital merch,
blue alligator skin or something. Yep. So, all right. How about we jump back? Let's jump back let's jump back to communities and building positive communities, because YouTube has announced yesterday that they are going to remove the dislike count number on accounts. So you'll still have the dislike button. So if there's a video that you don't like, you can still click on dislike, but only the creator is going to see that number. And this is really an effort to promote more respectful interactions, because what YouTube's data has been finding is that smaller creators, newer creators are getting attacked by these bands of dislikers, right? They're getting targeted. And so this is a way for those trolls not to see those numbers go up, right? And this is a direct quote from YouTube. The reason why they're doing this is that they, quote, strive to be a place where creators of all sizes and backgrounds can find and share their voice. So this is a way to make sure that all of those creators of different backgrounds, maybe from marginalized communities, maybe women who get targeted with a lot of negative comments, a lot of negative interactions, this is a way to help them feel supported, and also kind of keep those bad actors at bay. So I think this is a great step forward with YouTube. I have listened to a couple of my favorite YouTubers talk about how losing the dislike button, that was sort of their judgment on how good a how-to video might be, But I think in general, I think this is a great step forward for YouTube, especially when you hear about the mental health of creators, who say they get hundreds of positive and enthusiastic comments, and it's the 3 negative ones that destroy them for the rest of the week. So I really like this. I love YouTube. I love the YouTube community. And I'm really happy to see that they're taking this step.
Definitely, yeah. And I just want to highlight one quick comment from NLTMW. Says, wouldn't it be better to work on banning trolls, for instance, if they dislike 10 videos per day rather than faking the numbers? I got to say, I actually think they should remove all of the analytics, the likes and the dislikes. I think they should let people do it, but they should not have them publicly out there, because I think that really also puts the responsibility on the creator to actually pay attention to their analytics. What a lot of people do is they just throw stuff out, and then they're like, oh, it doesn't get enough likes or whatever. And then they pull it down. And it's like, no, you really need to post it and let it have its time, in the spotlight, and then look at your analytics and see, okay, well, why did, that video got a lot of dislikes? Well, it got a lot of dislikes because maybe the message was incorrect. People thought they were getting one thing and they were getting something else. So,
it can be interpreted so many ways, but the problem is the algorithm. The algorithm really likes likes. So your video isn't getting promoted to more, and isn't going to be discovered more unless it gets more views, more likes. So I think YouTube needs to change up when we think about it as a systems approach, as who was it that said it? NLTMW had said that, banning the users that are banning the trolls. I think there's too many trolls and too many bots, that this needs to be on a systems level, an algorithmic level.
Yeah.
So
Very cool. Okay, so we got one last topic we want to talk about, and then we're going to put everything else in the blog post.
Yeah.
Sarah, what's that last topic?
This is your favorite. You have been waiting for this Twitter Blue stuff forever. So Twitter has been talking about how they're going to have more subscriptions, talking about how they're going to have paid subscriptions, maybe how you can undo a tweet. We've been talking about this for months, right? And they are actually rolling it out. So you're now going to subscribe to Twitter Blue. You're going to pay to undo tweets. Now, before anybody gets all excited about this,
yes,
what this means is exactly, you can roll back your tweet. You can't, it's a little different than delete, but it's basically, as say you're pressing tweet, right? And you see, as it flies off your screen, you see a typo and you say, no, it's slow motion, right? This is going to be a way to undo that tweet. Not delete it, not edit it, but kind of undo it while it's still in that weird universe. Again, details are still a little foggy about how it's going to work. But Twitter Blue, available on iOS and Android right now in the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. You will be able to recall that tweet, as I said before. And then there's going to be a lot more tools for users to manage their feed. So there's going to be a reader mode. There's going to be bookmark folders. You're going to be able to implement themes for your app and your icon. You can create a custom navigation bar for your reading pieces. You can also pay to see things ad-free on sites. Now, here's where it gets really interesting about the ad-free piece, is that Twitter is going to pay the publisher of that tweet a bit of that subscription fee. So if people are reading some of the ad fee articles from the Washington Post, for example, the Washington Post is going to get a little bit of that money from the Twitter Blue subscriptions. It's not going to eliminate a paywall, like WAPO has a paywall for certain articles, or there's a certain number you can read before you have to subscribe. But it's going to give some of those publishers, especially Twitter, where people go for news, they consume tons and tons of news. It's going to give some of those publishers a little bit more revenue when newsrooms are really struggling. So right now, some of the publications that they mentioned who are going to be part of this ad-free site, Washington Post, The Atlantic, BuzzFeed, The Verge, there's a couple of others. It doesn't mean that your Twitter will be ad-free. And like I said, it doesn't mean that you can circumvent the paywalls, but it's going to give you some content that you'll see ad-free. You're also going to be able to curate top articles from your most followed accounts, which means, to me, it sounds like you're actually going to be able to curate, okay, I want this feed. It's sort of like what they have now. What's the word that it is? That's the lists on Twitter, right? Is
Twitter
it
list?
lists?
Yeah, Twitter list, yeah.
Yeah. But it's going to be a little more user-friendly, a little more aesthetically pleasing. And I know you love this. $2.99 a month for Twitter Blue.
I gotta say, I mean, I think that the fact that people are gonna have to pay for some of this, I don't think that's actually a problem. I think because you'll see sites like Google. I mean, they do similar things. They've built some of their products in, but those come at a cost. Everything comes at a cost. And so I think just the key thing to keep in mind here, just with Twitter Blue, again, it's not going to be for everyone, but it's going to, you have to look at like the how much time it's going to save you. So if I spend $36, if I spend a lot of time on Twitter and I pay $3 a month, for example, for something like this and all the other functionality that comes with it, and it helps me do more business, then it's worth spending the $36. However, if I'm paying $36 and I'm not getting I'm not getting business out of it, things like that, and it's not helping me, it's not saving me time, then maybe it's not worth your time to actually tap into that.
Right.
So just a couple of quick notes, by the way. So we're going to make sure we have Scott back on. We also have a blog post recap, by the way. We have a bunch of other topics that we actually are not going to get to this week. Things like there's some Twitter visual tools. We have an Instagram and Twitter update. That one's actually very just so worth checking out. And we also have a Spotify update as well. So if you've been doing Spotify and you're putting audio podcasts on Spotify, you want to also make sure you go check out the blog post. That's going to be at socialchefs.com/SC317. Sarah, who do we have next week?
So next week we have Agata Pavlak, and that's going to be November 18th at 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on all the Social Chefs channels.
Fantastic.
And folks can find me online at Sarah Monroe VT, and Christian, they can find you
at Social Chefs, actually.
At Social Chefs.
Social channels. So awesome. Fantastic. Well,
great.
It's been a great show. We're going to make sure we get all this written up in the blog post. With that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We'll see you all on a future episode. Bye.